After you've gotten safely through the transition phase, phase 2 will start. During phase 2, the main tank will be moving the boss around in a triangle shape, moving from the green at spawn location to the balcony where he will place the yellow gas bombs, and then moving on to the two triangle shapes protruding from the big circle on the floor on the bottom right side of it, to be in place for where the orange ooze is going to be guided to him. As main tank, your hardest job will be to have your timing correct, always being at the balcony where the yellow gas bombs are coming to place them out of the way, and always getting to the green ooze's spawn location in time. You need to be careful, you can very easily end up with bombs in the middle of melee, which can end in disaster. For ranged players, phase 2 is mainly about maximizing DPS while dodging malleable goos, and bouncing the plague between each other. For melee it's quite simple, you just stack on the green ad and nuke the orange when it comes within 10 yards of the boss. If the tanking is done right, melee shouldn't have to worry about the yellow gas bombs, but on occasion the timers of the bombs will match with the death of an ooze, and melee will have reached the boss before he drops the bombs. If this happens, just look at the ground where they spawn and move away from them quickly. Running over them will give you a minus chance to hit debuff that will last for 15 seconds. 5 seconds after they have spawned, they will explode and kill any players near them. Once you are getting close to 35% HP on the boss, you need to call for stop DPS until the ooze is dead. We usually call it on 38%. It is very important that you time the last transition phase correctly, so that you do not end up with 3 oozes at the same time. As soon as the ooze you are killing dies, take the boss to 35%. Sometimes, if you have low DPS at this point, the tank might want to start moving the boss towards the melee players to meet them halfway, so that you gain the extra DPS time. The general rule at this point, after the ooze dies, is 4 to 5 seconds DPS for 1% of Putricide's HP. Because of the huge amounts of movements at this point, raid DPS will be significantly lower than normal. The second transition phase will be the same as the first, the only exception will be that the main tank needs to be ready at the door towards the end of the phase, so as to have Putricide run the length of the room, giving DPSs more time to finish the ads off before Putricide reaches the tanks. As soon as your ad dies in the second transition phase, you start DPSing Putricide. Phase 3 is all about burning the boss down, but be aware, you will still have the Unbound Plague jumping around. There are different ways of dealing with it. One is simply to have people run into another player when they are getting close to 10 seconds and give away the debuff. This phase is very short, so this tactic will work just fine. Another tactic is to give the plague to a shaman or a soulstone player and have him die so the plague goes away, and then let him get back up. The biggest challenge in phase 3 is killing the boss before any of the tanks gets 4 mutated plagues on them. The mutated plague does shadow damage to the entire raid and will triple in damage every time a tank gets a new stack on him. The first 2 stacks on a tank will not be doing a lot of raid damage, but on the third stack you will start to see the raid taking quite big damage ticks. To give an example of how it works, let's say 1 plague on a tank does about 500 damage to everyone in the raid. 2 plagues on the same tank will then do 1500 damage, 3 stacks will do 4500 damage, 4 stacks will do an unhealable amount of 13,500 damage every 3 seconds. Because it keeps tripling in damage for each stack on a tank, you are far better off having multiple tanks taking low amounts of stacks instead of trying to give one tank all of them. To achieve this, you'll need a tank rotation. We use 4 tanks to ensure we have enough time to kill him, even if we lose players along the way. You want your tank rotation to be something like this. Should one of your tanks die with mutated plague on them, they will heal Putricide for about 2 to 3% of his HP for each stack of mutated plague on them. Positioning in phase 3 is quite important. You want the raid to always be in the middle of the room or behind Putricide, and never in front of him, as he will be kited around the outside wall. The reason you kite him is to avoid the bombs and poisons he drops, and the reason you never stand in front of him is that you do not want poisons or malleable goo in the kite path. This is it for the general tactic. We will now list some of our players' personal experiences with the fight and the tips and tricks they have learned along the way. We will start off with the tanks. Tanks on this fight should always pop a cooldown just before they taunt in phase 3 to ensure the healers can keep them alive. Standing 5 to 10 yards away from the boss when you taunt, making him run to you, can also be very useful if healers are having problems swapping fast enough to keep tanks alive when they taunt. If all your tanks have gotten 3 stacks, the next tank will get 4, It can be useful to taunt guide the boss to gain the last few seconds of DPS. Just ensure that you taunt the boss from 20 to 30 yards away, and you will gain another 3 seconds of DPS time. If you can taunt it again before it reaches the other tank, you can bounce it back and forth between tanks until it goes taunt immune. Next are some tips from the healer calling out Unbound Plague. For calling out, try to have 7 to 8 people that knows what to do with the Unbound Plague and rotate them. Try to know 2 steps ahead who needs to take the plague, so you can concentrate more on healing. It takes some experience to learn when to watch surroundings and when to watch the raid frames. A good trick to use when you're occupied by moving and watching surroundings are to let the plague jump around a bit in melee. Next are some tips for the DPSs. As melee, when the green ooze is close to death, you want to get knocked towards Putricide to save runtime and let ranged casters finish off the green ooze. As ranged DPS, you want to stay spread until the plague is cast. Then you want to try and stay close to the guy with the Unbound Plague without stacking up on him, so that you can quickly get to him if your name is called out. I hope you found our explanation for the 25-man heroic tactic of the Putricide encounter helpful. If you are looking for more tactics or kill videos, you can visit www.contingencyeu.net for more movies.